Chris Sewall here, baseball card collector, investor, dealer, in that order. Welcome everyone. Story time today. This is the story of a large purchase I made in 2017, a massive quantity collection, which turned out to be a really great buy. I have all the financials on it, so I'll share that at the end. The buying experience itself was quite strange, or we'll call it unique, a little bit sad in a way, but you could also view it as happy depending on how you want to look at it. So I was living in LA, and somebody contacted me through my website, said he had his son had a huge collection of cards that he was selling, and he was selling them for his son. He was north of Bakersfield, so about a 3-hour drive for me each way. He said there were between 50 and 100,000 cards, all modern from the last few years. He didn't really know much more than that. Didn't have an asking price, said he was just taking offers, but he wanted the entire thing gone. It was an all or nothing deal. He just wanted it all out in one shot. So I agreed to drive up and take a look. I just took my standard car at the time, a Toyota Avalon, as 100,000 cars easily fit into the trunk in the back seat of that Avalon. I had done that many times by now. This is one of those deals that could absolutely go either way. It could very well just be a large pile of commons left over from some savvy collector or savvy dealer who's just trying to unload all their worthless cards. Or it could be an absolutely loaded collection, fantastic buying opportunity, or anything in between. You just don't know. So I bring $5,000 cash along with me. I arrived at the guy's house. It's a modest home in a cozy suburban neighborhood. He's maybe 50 or so, and he's not rude or mean. He's just very cold. No interest in small talk, and he seems almost annoyed. Not at me. He just seems annoyed that he has to spend his afternoon selling a pile of sports cards. He opens up the garage, and there's the collection on the garage floor. The first thing to note is that it is way more than 100,000 cards, probably more like 400,000. It's funny because when you're dealing with quantities this high, most people greatly overestimate the count. They say 100,000 and it turns out to be 25,000 type of thing. But here he had greatly underestimated it. This picture I've used before as a stock photo for other videos, but this picture is the actual deal itself I'm talking about here. This is the front shot, and here is the same stack from the back. The thing is, the pile you see in the picture here was 1/3 of the collection quantity-wise. So take this pile and multiply it by 3 to get a sense for how many cards there were. Now, I'm extremely fast at assessing large collections and making fairly accurate estimates as to their overall value. But I'm not Superman here, so I tell him, I'm going to need quite a bit of time here. And he says, how long? And I say, certainly a number of hours. And he says, he'd like to keep it to 2 hours. So I say, okay, I'll do my best within 2 hours. Now, 2 hours is going to be tough. I'm going to have to make some very loose estimations here. And I start going through boxes. And after I've gone through a couple boxes, I realize 2 hours is not going to be tough. It's going to be beyond impossible. The more a collection is sorted, the easier it is to assess its value in a quick manner. This collection was completely unsorted, not organized in any way. And in fact, what clearly had happened was someone just opened pack after pack after pack, looked at the cards once, and then just put all the cards in a box. They hadn't separated the good cards out. They hadn't organized anything. It was just a complete mishmash. All 4 sports, years from about 2010 to 2017, and just no rhyme or reason whatsoever. Nothing, not one card was in a sleeve or a top load or a case of any kind. You can see every card in the picture is loose, and that was the case throughout. I'd pick up a handful of cards, and it would be 20 worthless commons, followed by a $10 insert, and then 20 more worthless commons, followed by a Tom Brady card, and then 40 worthless commons, followed by a $50 refractor, etc. I mean, this would just take days to assess properly. So I now have 2 major problems. The first is that 2 hours is just not going to be enough. I can do my best and be ultra conservative, which I'm going to have to be, but so I guess I can work around that one. The second problem is there's no way the cards are going to fit in my car, not even close. I would probably need to make 3 trips using my car, and remember, I'm 3 hours from home, so that's going to be an issue. And on top of all this, the guy was pretty cold with me. Again, not rude, just seemed annoyed at the whole situation. So I come up with a plan, and I ask him if it's okay to put the cards into piles, and he says that's fine. I'm going to open up a box, take a quick glance. If it looks promising, I'll spend a few minutes on that box and put it into pile A. I'd record on my phone what I would pay for each box in pile A and keep a running tally. If I open up a box and it does not look promising, I wouldn't even bother. I'd just put that box into pile B, not deal with it for now. And the goal was to get pile A to be about what could fit into my car by the end of the 2 hours. I tell him the plan and say that assuming it's something I want to buy and assuming we can come to a price, I'll buy pile A today, pay for it, and take it home. And come back tomorrow or in a couple days with a van, and we can work out pile B. I also make it clear that, in all likelihood, pile A is going to be more valuable than pile B, even though pile A will be smaller. He seems sort of slightly annoyed with all this, but he says okay. He stays in the garage with me and starts reading a book, which he reads for 2 hours straight, no chit-chat whatsoever. I start the plan. I just start flying through boxes as best I can, which I have to do in order to get this done. I'm extremely estimating things and being fairly conservative. The vast majority of cards are just commons from someone having opened pack after pack after pack, but there are hidden goodies scattered throughout. In one box, I find 2 Mike Trout Topps rookies. Keep in mind, this was 2017, so there were only a couple $100 each back then or so. In another box, there's a Topps Chrome White Refractor LeBron James, numbered out of 99. Also maybe a few $100 back then. Every box was the same, just a random mesh of cards. Someone had just clearly opened pack after pack after pack and just put the cards into the box without separating anything. Imagine if you went to a card store, bought 50 low-end packs, no high-end products, just 50 packs, opened the cards, looked at them once, put them in a box, and then closed the box and put them in your garage, and then repeated this process 1,000 times. That's basically what was going on here, or what it appeared to be. Nothing was graded. Like I said, nothing was in sleeves or protectors of any kind. Everything was loose. I just never, even the higher dollar cards were loose. I had just never seen a collection like this before of this quantity. I started wondering, how did this come to be? I tried to ask the guy, and he wasn't giving me any information. At one point, I considered that maybe his son had passed away, but that wasn't the case, because he actually called his son while I was there to tell him that I was looking at the collection. But anyway, I finished and I add up everything on my phone, and it came to something like $7,000 that I would conservatively be willing to pay for pile A. I figured that was safe. Worst case scenario, maybe a break even. Best case scenario, there's a whole bunch of hidden treasures I hadn't seen yet. So $7,000 where I want to be. I decided I'm going to offer him $6,000 and see what happens. To this point, he hadn't given me absolutely no information regarding what he was hoping to get, how much he thought they were worth, or anything. I was completely in the dark. Maybe who's going to negotiate me up, or who knows. We're going to see. But so I tell him, I'm done, and I re-explain the 2 pile thing, and I say, for pile A here, I can offer you $6,000. The only thing is I only have 5 on me. I'd have to run to the bank and pull out the other 1,000. But there's an ATM in my bank not far from here. And he pauses and he looks kind of confused, and he says, "You're gonna pay me $6,000 for this?" And I say, "Yeah, that's my offer." And he says, "Well, yeah, that's a deal." And his entire demeanor changes. And I say, "Okay, great. I'm gonna run to the bank and pull out the rest of the cash. I'll be back in just a few minutes." He says, "Yeah, no problem. Take your time. I won't touch anything till you get back. Feel free to take pictures of the cards so you know that they're exactly as you left them." And I say, no, that's not necessary. And he says, no, please, I insist, just so you know that I haven't touched anything and nothing's been rearranged. And I say, okay, and this is why I have a picture of both the front and the back of the pile sitting in his garage. I run to the ATM. I'm back in 20 minutes, no issues. I pay him, and he is ecstatic. He calls his son and tells him about the sale, and the son is clearly thrilled as well. I mention again, pile B, and he says, "Oh, you know what? You can have it. You're in Orange County, right?" And I say, "Yeah." And he says, "I have a truck. I'll drive it down to you tomorrow morning. You can have it. I'll just give it to you." And I say, "Really? Well, I can pay you something for it. Why don't I give you, $500 when you deliver it?" And he says, "Sure. That's great." And okay, this is the easiest negotiation of all time. So I start loading the cards into my car, and he helps me. And while we're doing this, he completely opens up, and I'm actually very glad he did, because at this point, remember, he had been very standoffish with me for a few hours now, and I was beginning to get suspicious that maybe the cards were stolen somehow, although that didn't really add up. But he tells me that his son has massive addiction issues. He used to be addicted to things like alcohol and gambling, but had actually gotten over those, but replaced them with other addictions. And whatever he got addicted to, he just got addicted to at such an unhealthy level. In the last few years, it had been cards. Basically, every Friday when he got his paycheck, he would immediately go to the card store and spend every last dime on cards. And it had gotten so bad that he couldn't do things like pay his bills, and he had to move back home with his parents because he was in a lot of debt, and he just could not control his addiction. He was in a full rehab center dealing with his addiction, and the step he was currently on was getting rid of all his cards, every last one, whatever it took. He had to have his dad sell the cards for him, because if he was in the vicinity of the cards, he wouldn't have been able to part with them. But the son understood that it had to be done, so this is why he wasn't he wasn't present. And he wasn't allowed to return home until all the cards were gone, which is why the father was so eager and willing to drive him down to me the next day. He just wanted this whole episode over with. So it all makes a lot more sense now, but the one thing that's still a little strange is how happy they were with my price. I mean, my offer I thought was fair based on the time I had to make it, but he must have spent 10 times that on packs or more. So I asked him, hey, I'm curious, the deal is done, we're good. I'm just curious, what were you hoping to get for the collection? And he says, honestly, he had no idea, and the son is really not capable of assessing it. But he had another dealer come look at it a few days earlier. That dealer had looked at the entire thing for less than 5 minutes, only opened maybe a box or two, and then offered $200 for the whole thing. The father had absolutely no knowledge of cards whatsoever, but he did sense that the dealer wasn't being fair, so he passed, and even though he really just wanted this whole episode behind him, and so they could move on with their lives. But this sort of made sense as to why he wasn't warm and fuzzy with me when I arrived. I don't know this for sure, but my sense is he would have happily accepted an offer of like $1,000 or something like that. It's sort of a mixed emotion thing. I mean, on one hand, it's kind of sad that these cards caused somebody so much pain, and they weren't there to see them off. But on the other hand, I could see how happy and relieved the father was. Hopefully it was sort of like an important step towards recovery. But that's it for the deal. I drove home, and the next day, the father, as promised, delivered Pile B in his truck. I gave him an extra $500 and got the entire collection for $6,500. At this point, I was not actually overly confident that it was going to be a killer deal, but I was really excited to go through it because it had enormous upside potential. This picture is not from the deal, but this is basically how I feel whenever I purchase a large collection. Remember, at this point, I hadn't even looked at 2/3 of it, and the 1/3 that I had looked at, I'd really just skimmed quickly, so who knows what's buried in there. The deal turned out to be extremely good, mainly because Pile B ended up being basically just as good as Pile A, although there were no really big money cards anywhere in the collection. With that many packs having been opened, you would expect there to be some mega hits here and there, but there was no card worth more than, say, a couple $100. I suspect whenever he did pull a big money card, he just immediately traded it back to the store for more packs, which is something a lot of pack addicts do. The collection took about a full month to sort through. I made almost 300 lots for eBay. Here are just a few and what they sold for. You can see there were maybe 1,000 jersey cards, which I used to make 16 different lots. Most of the ones here, I'm sure, were commons or minor stars type of thing. There were well over 1,000 or so common autographs, made 14 bulk auto lots out of those. These are the accounts and what they sold for. Here are some of the player lots I made and what they sold for. 175 Ben Roethlisberger cards for $53, for example. I don't remember the quality of the cards in these lots, but surely the bulkier ones were just standard base cards, where the smaller lots were inserts and parallels and jerseys, etc. Definitely wish I had the 300 plus Jordans back at the moment. Surely they would be worth far more today, and a lot of grading potential now that didn't exist back then. This junk lot listing here is a dealer I sold all the commons to. He pays $1 for every 1,000 commons. I've sold him millions of commons over the years. I don't know how it came to $826. He must have bought some other stuff for me as well, in addition to the, maybe 350,000 commons, which he would have paid $350 for. In addition to the 300 lots, I sent 341 cards into PSA. If I had bought this exact collection today, I imagine there would have been many, many thousands of cards worth grading. But like I said, back then, it didn't make sense financially to grade nearly as many cards that it does today. I sold about 500 singles via eBay, most of them graded. Here's a snapshot of just a few of them and their prices. I don't remember what the exact cards were, but this is the year and the player and the price. If you see a 9 or a 10 after the name, that's the PSA grade. The most expensive card I sold in the entire deal was one of those Topps Trouts. I mentioned I had seen two when I was looking through it. There actually ended up being 3 in the whole thing. I sent all 3 of them into PSA. I got a 9 and 2 10s. Sold the 9 for $280 and sold one of the 10s for $600. Again, this was 2017, and I did keep the other 10. I still have it today. The full financial breakdown looks like this. I paid $6,500 for the entire deal. My only expense on the purchase was gas, $50. My total PSA cost was $3,865. That's roughly $11 per card on average. And this is when turnaround times for bulk orders were, 2 to 3 months. Oh, how I miss those days. My all-in cost was $10,415. These are the monthly sales. Everything here is after fees have been sold and accounted for and rounded to the nearest hundred. Month one, I sold $400. This is low because most of month one was spent sorting the collection and shipping stuff off to PSA. By month two, I started getting some more lots listed on eBay, 1,900. Month three, 5,200. By month four, the PSA orders had come back and I did $8,800. Broke even at some point during month four. Month five, 7,100. Month six, 4,400. Month seven, 1,900, and then another 900 trickled in over the next few months. Total sales was just over 30 grand and a total profit just over 20 grand. My notes say it took 4 weeks to sort through it and list everything. Let's consider an additional week of man hours to maintain and ship everything over the year. I'd very roughly estimate this deal took about 5 weeks of full-time work. And again, the break-even point was around the 4-month mark. I know I kept a few cards for long-term holds, but it's not in my notes which ones or how many, and I don't really remember exactly. Other than, again, I do remember that I kept the Trout PSA 10 and I kept that LeBron white refractor, both of which have proven to be nice long-term holds. Anyway, that's it. I have at least 5 more adventures in card dealing stories to share over the coming months, maybe even more than that. So please thumbs up and subscribe if you enjoyed. If you have thoughts about the deal, feel free to leave them in the comments. And as always, if you have any questions, ask away. Have a great day and see you again next time. Thanks, guys.